Hello, everybody, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Cache, and you are watching Shay with the Hobbies. Tonight, we are taking a break from our discussions of reading Edgar Allan Poe to have a discussion about racism in classics. Where's my Edgar Allan Poe book? Across the room. Hold on, let me go get it. Yeah. Come on, chair. Yeah. Am I being lazy because I don't want to get up? Sure am.
Hey, that's like an ab workout there.
It is. And I'm getting my cast. Yeah, there we go. All right. Here we go. Girl, when nobody talking to you? I'm talking about Eddie P, not Cleo. Okay? Okay. All right. So we'll be talking about racism in classics tonight. I have my lovely co-host Nicole. I will let her introduce herself and then we shall get started. Nicole.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nicole. My channel name is Who Picked This Book. You can really find me on any social media platform with that handle. But yeah, I'm over there talking about all things romance and loving every minute of it.
Love it, love it, love it. You know, Nicole be our resident romance recommendation person giver. She be letting us know all the things, all the things. Okay, so we talked about this our first live a little bit and in our videos, but what kind of prompted this conversation? Let me get that light out of my eyes before I'm like having a full on migraine. Get the peppermint oil. For those of y'all don't know, peppermint oil and migraines, they like to disappear.
Yeah, I have this like roller where I can just put it over my
Over,
forehead.
yes.
And then it's
I need
just,
a roller. I need a roller. I just
it
have to
just, I feel like it
I have to
infuses my
inhale.
brain.
I have to inhale it. Okay. All right. Whew, okay. Feel so much better already. And so the reason this came up is because originally, when me and Nicole were deciding what we wanted to collaborate on, originally we wanted to go through and read Agatha Christie's backlist. And then the lovely Nicole, who y'all know by now, is going to do her research because for the last 7, 8 weeks, she's been bringing research every week. She did her digging and she found this video, and it was about one of Agatha Christie's original titles. I think the title that they settled on is "And Then There Were None," or "And Then There Were."
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
like
then there
that.
were none.
And then there were none. But it was originally 10 little N words. And then it went to 10 little Indians. And either way, we just were like, what we're not going to do is that, because the word has always been a negative word. It was never a positive word. And the nursery rhyme in which it was like taken off of was never a positive one ever. So because of that, it was just like it's a no for me. And as we continue, we'll kind of get into this conversation about the art and the artist, because for me, I can't take away from the fact that, oh my gosh, she's the like mother of the common mystery. And yo, I know there's not a cricket in my house, but it sounds like it is because the window is open.
No.
And I'm like, I don't know if y'all can hear it, but I can hear it. And it's like,
I can't
yo,
hear it. So
I can hear it. It's so loud to me. And I'm like, bro, I'm trying to talk. Why are you trying to talk over me? I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it. But there is no separation of the art and the artist for me in these situations, because in these situations, we weren't even considered as Black people human. So it's a lot harder for me to be like, oh, she didn't mean it this way. Right. Like it's a lot harder for me to see that when it's like, well, that was literally all the thought was in that time period. So it's hard for you to convince me that no, that wasn't what she thought. I mean, whatever you
right.
say, whatever you say.
Whatever helps you sleep at night kind of thing.
Right. So Nicole, you have intro thoughts before we like dig into the questions and whatnot?
I mean, you hit the nail on the head, because I did want to kind of start with how we kind of came to this, because of what we were originally going to do with the Agatha Christie, and that TikTok that I found, and that original title of that book, and about the original title of the book, and about the fact that Agatha Christie didn't even want to change it. It wasn't even her idea. It was like it was the publisher's idea to change it just in the United States, not even in the UK. In the United States, they're just like, okay, that's slightly offensive. So they decided to change it to 10 Little Indians, which isn't that much better. So the fact that it wasn't even her decision to change the title of her book, she actually fought to keep that title, is kind of telling. And I did find out some more information because, as Cache said, we do the research. And it was, I want to say, let me get to my page here. Okay, so the United States published it under the title, and then there were none in 1940. So that's what they changed it to after a year, I think, because it was published in 1939. So after a year after that, it was, and then there were none. The UK kept the original title until 1985. I was born in 89. So if that isn't bad enough, Agatha Christie's great-grandson had the French change their version in 2020. 2020.
And I feel like that was the one where he was like, I don't feel like she would want any of her readers to feel negatively. And so it's just something that was long overdue or something like that. Boy, it's 20 years shy of 100 years since the book came out. What you mean?
Mm-hmm. Yep. He was just like, she was an entertainer. She wanted to entertain people. She thought that, you know, if she ever thought somebody was going to be offended by her title or anything that she did, she would feel so bad about it. I'm like, would she though?
She wouldn't have, because she didn't consider them people. Like, that's the part that I don't feel like people are accepting, right? Like, that's the difference between back then and now. Mm-hmm. There was property and then there were humans. And unfortunately, we were not seen as humans. So when you say those things, they were true for who she thought were human.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You couldn't drop Agatha Christie into 2022 and expect her to think all the things that we currently think and do and move in to make sense to her. They wouldn't, because she couldn't fathom a world in which that existed. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's just like, I think it's worse to try to make excuses than to rather just accept the things as what they were for what they were at the time.
Exactly.
When people are like, well, that's just how it was. Well, then if that's just how it was, let's just admit that that's just how it was and stop trying to sugarcoat and act like it was better, because it wasn't.
It wasn't. Yeah, exactly. The fact
it
that
never occurred to her that this title could be offensive.
It never crossed her mind. Never.
It never crossed her mind.
Never crossed her mind.
That's just the truth of the matter.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's just
and I feel like that's what's been getting me, even with like the newer stuff that happens, right? Like the newer things that happen that people do that are racist or sexist or homophobic. It's like the truth of the matter is they don't see it because it doesn't occur to them. So like that's the problem.
Yeah.
Is that
she never thought any other way. And she didn't want to offend the people who she thought, quote unquote, we're
gonna buy the book. Right. That's the other part. You think you write things for the people you think are going to read them. You don't care about the people you don't think are.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's just
the fact that I was reading the article and it was dated 2020. And so I was like, okay, maybe they're just writing about it in 2020. And I was I was looking for a date in the actual article of when Agatha Christie's grandson did this. And no, it was literally 2020, 2 years ago. Like, really? You still had a whole version of the book out saying the N-word? Like, really?
Right.
In 2020? That kind of like flabbergasted me, because I was like, I probably read this article 5 times looking for a different year of when he could have done this. But no, it was literally 2020. And it wasn't just like for the anti-blackness. It was she was anti-Semitic. She says some things about in a lot of her work about Arab people, and it's not just one race. It's like it's literally, it's a lot of things in her work. And you can actually I think I have the article where it basically lists like the top 10 most racist things in Agatha Christie's work. And I'm like, wow. And I think I still have it on my phone here because I do have it. So I am going to link it. I mean, if y'all want to read it. If not, that's really understandable and fine.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely put it in the description box, because that's where the one for Poe comes. Because like, again, for like one thing that is common in the conversation about classic writing is that it is either very racialized when there is a black character, or there are just no black people in any of the stories ever.
Right.
So it's either the erasure of their existence, or it's a very specific caricature of an existence. Which we see, like, the only black character that I've been able to find about Edgar Allan Poe is in the How to Write a Blackwood article. And he's very much a enslaved human in this.
A servant.
So yeah, a servant for sure. So we have S.M. Ryan. I didn't realize I didn't say hello to everybody. So hello. Hello, it's so good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you. Bree say, yup. Bree and Alicia coming hot off of that Crime Readers of Color book club meeting tonight. Appreciate y'all so much. Alicia said, I read that book before I knew. Yeah. And like we were getting ready to work on our announcement videos when she found that. So like, I don't fault anybody for what you don't know, because again, the immediate conversation we had was like, how many people know about this? Because isn't the Agatha Award like a very big mystery award? What's going on? Because again, for me, you couldn't give me an award with that woman's name on it. I wouldn't want it. There would be no accepting it for me. Because of what she stood for, and what I can only imagine her writing of black people has to be. Either non-existent or caricatures. Because at the time, what did we have? If you weren't a black writer writing about black people, what were you writing? You were writing about experience you knew nothing about.
Yes.
Because you definitely knew way less about being black back then than you do now. For sure, because it was a complete different world, right?
Yep.
Right. The caucasity, as always. Cards on the Table is one of the worst ones I read. Oh wow. Okay.
Cards on the Table.
And this is the top 10 racist.
Yeah, you can go through, and it's not even just like, because there are stereotypical things that how she portrays people of color, but there are overtly racist things that are said by her characters in her book. So it's like, it's not just kind of like the stereotypes, like how her as a white woman would write a black person because she has no knowledge at all. It's like, it's the stereotypes. It's not just that. It's also the blatant,
the overtly racism. Right.
Yeah. So like what I read about Edgar Allan Poe is for how to write a Blackwood article. There's also another story of his that we're going to read at the very end. And that is, let me see. I wrote it down. It's the Pym one. It is the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym. So that also has, some black characters in it as well. So we will read that one. I think that's the very last story. I think that last week. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So, but in regards to Edgar Allan Poe, I did see some articles saying like it's kind of like the absent, black person trope.
Right, the absent black person. Right.
They're not either. That's not saying like they don't have black people in their writing, or when they are, they're kind of at that they're either at the servant role, or they play one purpose, and that is to kind of, if they have like a support to their quote unquote owner, and it's kind of like they have their part and they're almost out in like the very next sentence. It's like they're not there. It's the erasure, right?
It's the erasure for sure.
Yeah. So and that's kind of like, you have like the overt, and then you have the erasure, like the two different sides of the coin that we have, like Agatha's and then Edgar Allan Poe's.
For sure, because even in the How to Write a Blackwood article, the character Pompey is legitimately physically holding this woman up.
Yep.
Physically using his body to hold her up, to put her up to new heights, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a disregard for his pain. There's a disregard for his feelings. There's a disregard for his opinion. There's a disregard for him as a human being. Mm-hmm. While also, my sweet Pompey, this supposed to be endearing attitude towards him. And I feel like it's very indicative of what we don't realize happens in reality, right? Like in the ways in which quote unquote allies prop themselves up on the shoulders of Black people, but because they say sweet things, because they do nice things, because they are willing to carry a sign and march down a street with some Black people, they don't realize in which the ways and they still erase them. Mm-hmm. In ways they still prop themselves up and make themselves the center of the story. And I just thought that it was interesting how you can find that parallel for something written so far ago to now. Like, absolutely. I just thought that was just a very interesting parallel, like, to be able to find.
Exactly. For the character of Pompey, and I forgot her name, the narrator of that story. What is her name?
Okay, I was saying, no, Diana's the poodle. Is it Zenobia? Is that her name?
Yes, Zenobia. Okay. So when we first get introduced to Pompey, she's like, oh, my sweet Pompey, like you said, like the sweet, because she's needing something from him, right? She's saying like, oh, come with me and we'll do this. And like, cause she can't go by herself. So she needs, Pompey to come with her. So she needs something from him, and he's there to support her. Literally, like, uses him like as that, like you were saying, like as a ladder to, go and do what she wants to do. Right. But then the second that he speaks his mind and says that we shouldn't be here, it's not safe, we need to go, she physically assaults him. So the second that he is no longer useful to her,
that part,
the tables turn. And that's kind of, just like how you're seeing like her acting towards Pompey in that story is telling.
Right. Even the way in which she describes him, like, it made me feel.
Yes.
It made me so uncomfortable in the ways, and it genuinely felt like she was describing a pet.
Yes.
Like the ways in which, and there was like, I don't know, and I don't feel like I was imagining it, but it was like an excitement to describe this person that she owns to you. His teeth were deliciously white, and then it just was so cringy to me, and I just was like, as much as I disliked it, I felt like it was very true to the mindset of the time. Yeah, like, I don't think it was an embellishment. I don't think he wrote her in a way that there weren't actual women that he saw at the time act like this. That this wasn't a way that he saw people maneuver. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Not only was Pompey described very stereotypically, they described his lips, his ears being big, and they also described him being very short in stature and almost like giving him a non-human characteristics. And the one article that I read saying like going as far as making him non-human, almost kind of like a caricature, like something to be almost afraid of if that wasn't like your servant, you know. And
Right.
I took a screenshot, and I think I still have the article. Yes. Okay. So very like using the stereotypical representations of Black people with the big lips, large ears, but he's also described as a short, ugly little creature, almost resembling an elf or a goblin, further distancing him from humanity and further likening him to the traditional idea of what, according to Brown, who is the author of the little snippet that I saw, um, constitutes a thing, not a person. And it
Right.
was,
Which
it,
we've talked about that being what we were saw as things, property,
yes,
not humans, not beings. So
that's what
as
this
far as
article was saying. Like Pompeii being a thing and not a person, like
right,
her dog, because she
right.
also described her dog as well.
Right. She says
Like
she describes Diana the same way, like, oh, my Diana, like
mm-hmm.
her
Yep.
poodle, the same way. The same way. I think is again very telling. So for those of you guys in the audience participating and whatnot, what are some problematic classics that you've read? So here's the thing, I'll be perfectly honest. I have not read a lot of quote unquote classics. In school for classics, I guess for the most part, the things that we ended up reading were more like Shakespeare
Mm-hmm.
type things, which again I feel like goes right back into erasure, right? As far as like the characters and whatnot, just there just aren't any, or as far as like I've ever read, there weren't like many
Mm-hmm.
black characters or any that I knew of, right? Like there just weren't.
Right.
So I haven't really read any problematic classics. And I'll go even further to say that I don't usually, even now as an individual, read classics solely because I just know when they're written. And so I know
Mm-hmm.
that I have to take things with a grain of salt. And so for me, if that's how I'm gonna have to go into it, then I don't usually go into it to begin with, if I'm being like perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Like
Mm-hmm.
I I'm pretty sure I read Tom Sawyer or Huckleberry Finn or whatever the hell. I'm pretty sure that I
Mm-hmm.
have, but I had to be in like middle school when I did because it doesn't stick out. And
Right.
I've seen the movie with Jonathan Taylor Thomas, and that's about as much as I got for you when it comes to that
Yep.
book. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So when I like hear about it being racist and there's like the racist stereotypes and everything, am I surprised? No.
No.
Am I gonna give it another read to like investigate how racist it was? Hell no.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not a thing that's gonna happen. So that's like my answer to the question.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's just the Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer was just required reading in school. So that was literally the last time I read
Right.
that
So
as
that's what I'm saying.
well.
I know that I've had to read it, but
Right.
like couldn't tell you anything about it.
Nope. Not a thing. I remember them whitewashing a fence. That's about it. And
I'll literally anything I tell you would have to come from the movie. It would have to come from Jonathan Taylor Thomas falling
Taylor
through the
Thomas.
ceiling at his funeral. Like that's what it'd have to come to for it.
I honestly remember more about the Wishbone episode of Huckleberry Finn than Jonathan Taylor Thomas, but I did watch a lot of Wishbone. But so other than things that I've read in high school, the last classic that I read that I saw problematic things was I actually read The Secret Garden in March. And
Okay. I have not read that
this
in so long. So I can imagine. I can
this little
imagine
girl,
now, but I have not read it in so long.
this little girl, she before she moves in with her cousin and you know um seeing or discovering the secret garden, she lived in India and she had a servant who was Indian, and just the things that she thought, not only just thought, but said to her servant in the book, it was terrible. It was terrible.
Really?
And it
Yeah.
was, and um it just, and the servant followed this little girl to her new home in England, and I was like, you should have just stayed home. You should have just, because
Yeah,
it continued.
you should have been like, I'm not going.
And
So
it just
similar,
continued.
not in that exact same vein, but like I went through when we had the conversation about Agatha, and then we were like, okay, let's find something else, and we talked about like Nancy Drew. Like I went and looked, and like even in Nancy Drew, it's the same as it is with Edgar Allan Poe. Like it's an erasure. And then when it is one, it's a very random, and it's a servant or a waitress, or it's something like very in there and out, right? Because even in both, which I think is very telling for when they came out, in both Nancy Drew and in the Boxcar Children, the family help is not Black. And for in the time in which these things are written, you would honestly think that's a kind of a weird thing if you're being really honest about when they're published, because that's exactly who was working for you, were Black people, right? And so to me, it goes even further towards erasure, that even knowing that in this time the people working in the homes are Black, you don't want to write Black characters so much that the servants aren't Black.
Right. You go so far into your erasure that you're not even depicting.
Exactly.
Wow.
Because like Nancy Drew is like very early 1900s. Like, and it's multiple authors. Like it's multiple people across multiple generations writing for this.
Because the series is still ongoing.
Yeah, I feel like they just did a new like branch off.
Yeah. So I'm just like, I think they're still using that author's name.
Yeah, Carolyn Keene is still, they're still publishing under
but
that
it's
name.
like obviously it's not her, because
right. Yeah, no, I feel like Carolyn Keene's not even a real person. Like it's just a pen, it's been a pen name the whole time.
Oh, okay. That's another thing that I need to research on.
Yeah, because like Anna Martin is a real person, and she wrote some of the Babysitters Club, but she didn't write all of them. Okay. Right. And Carolyn Keene is just, she like it was a name that I feel like the publisher came up with, and the idea, because they saw how well the Hardy Boys were doing, and they were like, we want to do this with a female character. I feel like that was the story that I read. Now, mind you, it's been some months since I read that, so don't get me the line. Okay, so Alicia said Gone with the Wind was bad. Do not get me started on The Secret Garden. Yeah, I can imagine.
It was bad.
Okay, so do you think in the case of classics we should separate the art from the artist? So here's the thing on separating the art from the artist in general. To me, I think that that depends on the person, and it depends on the art. I feel like, to me, like that depends on the person, it depends on the art, it depends on the act in which you feel like you need to separate them from the artist from, right? Because like the truth of the matter is, for all intents and purposes, Edgar Allan Poe was not a good person. Like just generally, like you married your little 12-year-old cousin, whatever. I mean, I can't remember how old she was, but she was young,
13,
right? Like you did all these things. So if those are automatic things that I'm not okay with, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't take away from the fact that you can write.
Right.
I'm not trying to take life advice from you. I'm not trying to mold my life after you. I'm trying to see what it is that you offered to this genre of writing that I am intrigued by and I want to be a part of. And I'm taking what I can learn from it, and I'm moving on from it from that. For me, that's kind of like where I'm at with that. Right? Like I feel like had he read the audiobooks of these, or he turned these into songs, probably would have never touched them. Would have never listened to it, would have never heard it in his voice, none of that. I feel like I get to put some distance between me and him and his acts, because to me, they don't necessarily have a lot to do with what you wrote here, right? Like I don't feel any type of way about that. But had you had an N-word titled story, yeah, I probably would have never read it. Probably we never would be having this conversation. But again, it depends on the person and what they think and what they feel, right? So for me, this is one of those things that I can separate the art from the artist. When it comes to the Agatha Christie thing, to me, I just can't get with anyone using that word that's Caucasian. Like, I just don't understand why you would ever do it and why you would want to. And any type of explanation to tell me why it's a positive thing that you did it, I'm just, you lose me.
Right.
You lose me. And so, but that's a hard limit for me, right? So there's that. I do think that you can separate the art from the artist in some cases, but I do think in some cases it's not possible. And that's totally on you, how you can and do move through that. I don't think there is a right or wrong way. I feel like too many times we tell people like, you have to, you have to, you have to. And it's like, it really depends on how they took in that art. Right? It really depends on how important or how they feel that artwork is, right? Like, so for me, I can take this in and not feel no type of way because I don't live and die by Edgar Allan Poe. He's just a man to me. He don't really mean nothing, right? Now, had this been my favorite auntie and she wrote this, then I'd have a little bit more of a hard time trying to get through the material. Does that make sense? What I'm saying? I feel like that for me is what makes the difference. What are your thoughts?
I feel like, especially in the case of, you know, classics, and there's a point where if you read it, don't kind of say that it didn't have this in it, right? Like, don't like when I go and look at And Then There Were None and look at the reviews and people who know about the original title and they go ahead and still read it, and then they leave out of their review, this has this in it, right? So like, go ahead and read it, but don't pretend that this wasn't a thing, like this didn't happen, right? The acknowledgement. It's just like, okay, yeah, I read this and there's some pretty racist stuff in here. Like, be able to have the conversation and be willing to listen, because even if you say like in your review, or you're having a conversation on social media and someone says that's really racist, especially a member of the Black community is coming to you and saying that's really racist, don't be like, no, it wasn't. You're not a part of that community, especially if you're white. Like, you're not a part of that community. You cannot tell them that it's not racist when you're not a part of that community. Like, you have to be able to say like, yes, I acknowledge that. And, you know, don't pretend it didn't happen, because it did. And I feel the same way about you. Is like the use of the N-word, full stop. Right? Full stop.
It's full stop for me.
Yeah.
It's full stop for me, right? Like, I can't get with it, right? And I think it's interesting because I think about how like we are in such an interesting time right now that there are authors who have written things that are definitely problematic, who have the ability to go back and do something about that. And I just think that's an incredibly interesting time and place to be in. How interesting could it be to be able to go back and say, I did this thing wrong. I know more. I understand more. I have a better understanding. How much more can this story grow knowing what you know now, right? Like, there are so many conversations we have when we're like, we have whole comedians responsible for jokes they told 20 years ago that aren't funny anymore, and we want them to apologize. And why don't we hold that same energy for authors?
Yep.
It's a real question I really am curious about, right? Because like, there are things that in American Gods that I'm just like, yo. It's a different time. It was published in early 2000s. We as a society were very different. The things that we thought were okay and that we would say were okay to do, we don't do anymore, right? It's like, I love In Living Color. Could A Living Color get played on TV right now? Hell no. Hell no. There are so many things about In Living Color that would be offensive to so many people now compared to before. And that's how things are. Things change, people grow, people evolve. I do think that there are things to be gained from the situations in which those things happen, right? American Gods spurred a great show. A lot of great things came out of it. A lot of great people got opportunities and things from it. So you can't take away that from it, but you can still acknowledge that there were things about it that were problematic. There were things about it that needed to be changed. If you could go back and do it differently, would you? Should you? Yes.
carrying that. I love that you said that we're living in a time where authors now who have been writing since the 80s, the 90s, right, have where there are still very problematic things, even, back then, they have that opportunity to go back and change it, to go back and either republish or rewrite or whatever they need to do, and then acknowledge, I was wrong for using that. And you made me think of an author in particular, and her name is Lisa Kleypas. She is a historical romance author. She's also written some contemporary, but mostly she's written historical. In one of her book series in particular, she has the Romani people in her books, and she uses the slur, the G slur. And so she went back and she changed all of those slurs to say the Romani people. So the fact that she did that and she acknowledged that she used that and she changed it. So further publication, if you buy the Kindle version, you're going to get the newer edition that doesn't have that slur in it. And I just think that is the responsible thing to do. And that's what authors should be doing if they're alive and able to do it. The fact that Agatha Christie's grandson did make that change to, this one version that was still in existence. Should he have done it sooner? Absolutely. Absolutely, right. Yes. But I believe that they have a responsibility, right? To acknowledge, to take responsibility, apologize, and do something about it.
Right. Because the thing is like the number one thing is that I was taught to apologize, that you don't just say sorry. You have to acknowledge what you're apologizing for.
Yes.
And in ways in which you plan to not do that thing again, to not cause that pain, to not cause that harm. And so much of what happens when we talk about racism in general, there's not an acknowledgement because we don't like how uncomfortable it makes us feel. We don't like that discomfort that we get from having these conversations. But the truth of the matter is the acknowledgement of it would make it so much easier.
Yeah.
It would make it so much easier. Right? Yeah. So if in the conversation about the Agatha Christie Award, we acknowledge the racism that permeated through her books and through her stance and made it an award where we choose to highlight only minority authors under this woman's award, that would be taking it, making an acknowledgement of it. Because the thing is like whenever we have the conversation about why things need to change and why things need to be different and why we need to acknowledge, it's the history, it's the legacy, it's our family, it's in our blood, it's in our Okay, so yeah, let's keep your grandmama's award. We'll keep your grandmama's award, but we're gonna give it to the people that she would have never given that opportunity to, the people she never would have written about. Because that's what true acknowledgement, repentance, and sorry, changing your ways would do. And I think it's just so interesting that we understand that when it comes to everybody else but Black people. And I just...
It's the pretending that it didn't happen.
Had reparations for farmers who had slaves that lost their slaves in the war. We definitely understood a way to give them something because we took something from them.
Exactly.
Right? Like that's been a thing.
Which is ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Not only were y'all freaking traitors, we gonna pay y'all for being traitors. What in the caucasity?
Oh yeah.
Because like,
absolutely.
Who else would have been able to make that happen?
Nobody else.
Who else would have been able to make that happen?
Nobody else.
Right. Nobody. So yeah, so I do think that separating from the art from the artist is a thing that needs to be done. I do think that I appreciate the fact that this is gonna sound really bad. I appreciate the fact that the links that Edgar Allan Poe went to was just erasure, because I'm learning so much from reading his stuff. Learning so much from reading his stuff. And the truth of the matter is, y'all have heard me say it plenty of times, I don't have a problem with white authors not writing Black characters. I really don't. If you're not going to write Black characters, just make sure you are pushing Black authors. Because the truth of the matter is, I get that it's hard to write outside of your lane. I get that it's not easy. I get that it's going to suck when you do it and someone tells you you did it wrong. I get that that is never going to feel good. Ever.
Yeah.
But you can write Black side characters without ever having to make yourself pretend like you stepped into their foot. You can still write true characters that hold true to who they are without having to do any kind of caricature. You don't have to do no minstrel show. That doesn't even have to be a thing.
Right.
Because the truth of the matter is, some of y'all here, I don't have Black characters, so I need to write Black characters. And bruh, all you did was make their skin Black. And that's just as bad.
Right.
Like
ask for help. Like,
right.
Sensitivity readers
are not, we've said this time and time again, they're not negotiable.
Right.
And you are going to write outside of your lane. It is a requirement. It is not optional. It is not a if you feeling good. It's not if the money is there. No, it needs to be budgeted in.
Right.
Because the other part of that is you cannot require someone who is not in your realm of living to help you out and not compensate them in some way. We have to be done with this free labor. Because the truth of the matter is, you getting it right now here on YouTube right now. This is free labor right here. Free labor right here that you didn't have to pay for or nothing.
That's true.
So please don't ask somebody to read your 110,000 word manuscript and give you some sensitivity reads and just well, thank you for being so kind. And then they tell you what's wrong with your manuscript and you want to evoke their name when people come for you when your book come out. It's not okay.
No, it's not okay.
It's not okay.
Yep. You need to pay your sensitivity reader.
Pay him.
And exactly, no more free labor. No more free labor.
Come on, Tanika, yes. Open your my master's acting. I like that. Open your purse. Touch your neighbor. Say, neighbor, open your wallet. Okay. You gonna open the wallet. Hey, Margaret. Margaret said just found this in great topic. Thank you so much. Okay, our last question. How do you think classics can evolve despite racism for future generations? I'll let you go first. I'm all boisterous and I was calm down a little bit.
Okay, I think just to carry off of what we were saying kind of earlier, that authors either now, or if we're talking specifically about classics, the people who are responsible for them, like the family, or if like it's like this I forget, I'm blanking on the word, but whoever is responsible for that piece.
Right, because for like Nancy Drew is the publisher, because they're responsible for like the Carolyn King name. Right, yeah.
Right, so whoever is responsible for this piece of work, you need to acknowledge if there is problematic stuff, and if it's a classic, there is, and go back and change what you can. Like, change it. You know, like exactly how like it was done with Agatha Christie's great-grandson, changing the French edition of And Then There Were None, taking that responsibility, apologizing, and actually apologizing and not saying like, oh, she would never. She did. She would. But it's that like we don't, does it like classics aren't like this hierarchy, right? There are so many articles that I read that they're just like, oh, they're classics. It was quote unquote the time. We shouldn't be touching classics because they've inspired authors now. And that, to me, I feel like because they inspire people, they have a responsibility, right? So I'm just like, you have the responsibility, whoever is responsible for the work, to change problematic racist things in your work.
I completely agree. If you're going to say that this is the bar and everyone has to know this and everything, like this is the foundation of everything, then you have to acknowledge that the foundation has faults.
Yes.
You just have to do that, right?
Mhm.
Which we know is a thing that America is just not wanting to do right now in general, because like everything is that argument, right? Like that's the whole point of CRT. The whole point of CRT is the foundation of America was wrong. Like that's literally all. Isn't saying anything else other than the foundation of America was racism, because the foundation of America said black people are slaves, white people are not. Like period. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
So when we get to the foundation of classics, we're talking about classics written at a time where black people were not considered human, where black people were not considered equal. In that time frame, whatever that means, whatever your mindset was in that time frame, you came from that. We just have to acknowledge that, and have to acknowledge that having that mindset, it changes how you make decisions. The way people make decisions now versus how they made them in 1801 are drastically different.
Yes.
The ability to get information is drastically different. Right? Like,
yeah. I think we were just saying, like, in a couple of the other lives for this, like, this is free domain. This is just there. People you can Google a title and read it for free on the internet. So it's just like it's just so easily, information is so easily consumed, and it's easy to find things out. You know, it's like a simple Google search, and we found all these articles about Agatha Christie and all the racist stuff that she did.
Right.
So it's just like, and for when people say that, oh, I didn't know that, or I didn't, not that I didn't know that, but that's the fact that I can't find that out. I have seen like so many people saying like, I can't find this stuff out. Google is literally a free tool for you. Like, it happens.
Right.
You can find stuff out, but it's the not acknowledging. So like not knowing about it, but then once you do find out about it, it's the not acknowledging part that it needs to be, like, because as you said, it doesn't make people feel good. So like you said something really racist, and then you say, oh, I'm not a racist. I'm not, like, what you have to do is not say that and apologize, say I'm sorry, and just learn.
And for me, honestly, the one thing that I think I don't ever see people do is I don't ever see people seek to understand why it was racist. Instead of saying it's not, could you explain to me? Could you tell me? Could you teach me? Could you help me? So that at the next time I'm presented with this situation and where I would react this way, I can rethink the way in which I do things. Like, the truth of the matter is that we are all taught and functioning in an anti-black white supremacist society. There is a lot of things that each of us, black, white, Latino, Asian, we all have to unlearn. Like, that's just the truth of the matter of it. Like, yeah, some people are not going to give you grace in this learning process, but there are some of us that will. If you're truly trying to learn and change. And I do definitely agree with this, because the truth of the matter is that when we say classics, we very rarely mean black authors. Like, we act like there weren't black authors writing in these same spaces and time. Because again, to me, to be equal would be like, okay, if we're going to talk about this author and we're going to not necessarily acknowledge the problematic things they do, then I think that we should be reading Sam Greenlee. I think that we should be reading the other black classics that we have. I think we should be acknowledging that they exist. I think that we should be acknowledging that their work matters. I think that we should be acknowledging that they were doing this work and writing these works in the time where we were telling them they didn't matter, because that's an even bigger thing, right? Because the truth of the matter is we celebrate the Bronte sisters, right? We celebrate the sisters for writing and the women for writing when they wrote under male pen names, because they were doing something when they were not being treated fairly. But we can't give that same time and energy to black people. It's the math not mathing for me.
That's why I love that Bree, Lock Petition in the comments.
We love Bree and Bree's Black Classics.
Black Classics.
We love Bree and Bree's Black Classics.
I love that. I love it. Yes, absolutely.
Like a companion work to put into context how even at the time, the problematic nature of the classic wasn't necessarily just how things were at the time. Thank you, because the truth of the matter is, if we as Black people could acknowledge the racism that existed in our lives, in our stories, and still tell damn good stories, you could have too.
Mm-hmm.
Because the fact that you don't seem to think that it wasn't uncomfortable for us makes no sense to me. Makes no sense to me. Let me get this mouse working, y'all. You know, my mouse. Here's the thing. I need some more AAA batteries. That's the thing. And every time I go buy batteries, I think I need AA, and the truth is triple. So I got 40 AA batteries in this house, y'all. It's an issue. Adrian, hey, y'all. Sounds like we're digging into some serious topics. We're talking about classics. Yes. This is our, like, in the middle of our Edgar Allan Poe read along. This is our discussion. We're not talking about the stories we read. We're just talking about classics and what digging into this classic has done for us and made us think about. Mm-hmm. I had a friend suggest that Christie had racist characters but wasn't a racist herself, and not having read her, I didn't have a response. I will direct her to this video timely. Reese, speak your damn truth. Why I will continue to promote Black classics for sure. We love it. We love it. Yeah, the battery struggle for real. Reading Black classics is so important. So since your thing, I've read like Black No More by Georgia Schuyler. I've read The Spook Who Sat by the Door by Sam Greenlee. Like, I've been diving into Toni Morrison. I've been diving into Walter Mosley. Like, all these authors. And the thing is for me, what I had read of Black classics before were all nonfiction. And I'm not even going to talk to y'all. Like, Black nonfiction is hard. Like, reading The Souls of Black Folk by W.E.B. Du Bois, reading The Miseducation of the Negro by Dr. Carter G. Woodson is hard. Mm-hmm. So when I'm like, there's Black classics, there's like the first Black murder mystery, the first Black thriller, like written in the 1930s. Like, I'm reading these. There's things that I'm like, why weren't these impressed upon me with the same things? Especially because these were closer to my actual reality and our time frame because of when they were written compared to William Shakespeare. Ain't nobody been talking like William Shakespeare for a while, y'all. Mm-hmm. For a while. And we've been reading this man for a while.
A long time. A still required reading. Still
required reading.
Let's make Black classics required reading.
And I've said this already. I feel like classics should change with time. I feel like classics should be not a requirement, but an elective at a certain point. Because again, what was classic comes from a time period that we no longer live in, with mindsets and things and thoughts and rules that we no longer have. Mm-hmm. To make them the standard and not the option is dangerous.
Yeah.
I just walked into this talk, so forgive me for diving into the middle of it. I'll preface by saying I'm Puerto Rican, which is I'm Black, white, Spaniard man, and much more coursing through me. So I'm looking to understand deeper. As an author, I constantly find myself putting myself in the shoes of reprehensible characters, dark characters, evil characters. And since writing serial killers doesn't make me a serial killer, I have to ask, where does the divide between the author and the story end? Where does the divide between the author and the character end? If I write an evil or racist villain, will my readers assume the heinous things he says and does are my thoughts? I don't believe they are. So I don't think that at all. So here's my thing, is that I think it should be clear that this person is racist and a villain. And that's not the truth in a lot of these things, because it wasn't considered villainous to be a racist at this time. That's the difference.
Yeah.
It wasn't even considered being racist because you didn't see this person as human. That's not the same. Right? Because the truth of the matter is you're going to write bad characters. You're going to write negative characters, especially if you're writing crime fiction.
Right.
Especially if you're writing crime fiction. There are going to be some horrible things going on in those stories. And I don't attribute those things to the author. What I attribute to the author was the title of your book. What I
Right.
attribute to the author was the way in which you argued with the publisher to get this slur on your cover. What I attribute to the author is the fact that even after you changed it in one country, you didn't change it in all the others. You didn't make this a requirement. Those are the things that I attribute to you and your character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can see the character as a character himself, right? Like, it's like when we watch Training Day and we realize that Denzel in Training Day ain't Denzel in real life. We realize it's a character. We realize it's just a part of a role. There's a difference. And I think that sometimes people like to act like we're trying to villainize them because of their characters. And I'm like, no, it's you that I'm looking at.
Right.
Because I don't know anything about the book. I know that the title of the book came from a racist nursery rhyme. I know that the title of the book came with a racial slur that we know is a racial slur. We knew it wasn't a compliment. We knew we wasn't saying that to say, "Ooh, you this N-word." You my favorite. We knew that wasn't it. So that's it for me. And I think that is the other part of the conversation, right? Because like I don't think anything negatively about Edgar Allan Poe for this depiction of Pompeii in this book. I honestly think it's a very honest depiction of how people saw Black people at the time of this story. And I think it's honest because he didn't feel a reason to feel ashamed about it, because it was okay to think that way.
Yeah. It's just the fact that it's the actions of the author after the fact something was pointed out being offensive and racist, and the fact that she fought for her title and stood by the title after that. And for this little part here, if I write an evil racist villain, and what you said about there needs to be that clear distinction that this person, this character is evil, the villain. In Agatha Christie's work, a lot of the racist, problematic things that were said by characters was the hero of the story, the hero of Hercule Poirot, that he was the guy who was solving all the murders. He said a lot of these bad things. So it's just like, that's your main character who you're building this series on. And then you back that up, you almost double down and back up by saying like, I need this title. I don't want this title changed. It's not just characters, it's authors doing the things as well. So it's looking, at both. Yeah.
Right. No, but I think that was a good question. Adrian. So I hope it didn't come up like I was like not thinking it was a good question. But Black classics are required reading on book 2, right? They're required. I'm sorry about another Bronte. It's not right. I'm right. It's not happening. I'll be honest with you. I haven't read one. I have not read Jane Eyre. Like, there are so many things that are classics that I know that I'm never going to read. And it's truly a decision that I'm making for me as a person, because I know that everyone reads these. I know that everyone swears by these. I know that these are the things that everyone is like, every freaking list of their required books you must read before you die. These people are on there. And every time you go through that list, I can find 5 Black authors, and it's always the same 5 Black authors. And I can almost always guarantee you I know the exact 5 books it's going to be. And that's a shame, because most of them aren't even in the realm of Black classics that we would go to. Like, there's still so many more books written before then that we don't even know about, because nobody wants to give them attention, because we still keep giving these same authors the same attention, like the same ones. We can't do a little bit better, y'all. A little bit.
It's the research looking into it,
right? And that's what the challenge is, right? Like, the challenge is to read these things, to have these conversations, and to grow in as both readers and writers, right? Because the truth of the matter is, I now want to do nothing but write short story collections full of Black people because of Edgar Allan Poe, if I'm being perfectly honest. That's all I want to do. That's all I want to do. I want to write these little mind-bending thrillers with Black characters, and you're so wrapped up in this world, you don't even realize there's no freaking white people. Because how many people read this and never realized
Mm-hmm.
there were no Black people? I'm going to tell you, I was one of them in
Mm-hmm.
high school reading all the short stories.
Yeah.
It didn't occur to me that there were no Black people because there always were no Black people in the stories. So I didn't even think about it. And that's sad.
Mm-hmm.
That is sad to be required to read things for 12 plus years of your life and be so used to not seeing yourself that you don't even think twice about it.
Yeah.
You don't even think twice about it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, Adrian. Thank you. I do the same. There are certain classics that I won't read. Mark Twain's whole catalog is one of them. Exactly. Fantastic writer. But Huck Finn is racist out. We were talking about it. And he's supposed to be one of the heroes. Come on, right? Exactly. I'm ready. All right. We're on the same page. It's not even possible to write a protagonist that is messy and complicated and bigoted. But if you do that, you as a writer have the responsibility to, at some point in your work, have that bigotry challenged by the story's narrative, either through explicit dialogue from another character or via some kind of consequences for being casually racist or even outright hip. That's the truth. Is that when you don't give them any repercussions to their actions and you let them continue to go like this, like there's nothing wrong, you are saying there's nothing wrong with these actions. And that's where the problem is for me.
Right.
That's the problem for me. Yeah, I see the benefit of Blooms. We should all have a common roster of contexts as a culture, but keeping it white is wrong. We all lose out when we're not all represented. Very true.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting how we talk about America being a melting pot, but don't want to show all the ingredients in the pot. It's weird.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's weird. It's a melting pot of what? White queso? I need to understand because, like, there's nothing else in it. Then what are we melting? Just one thing? I just make it make sense. Is it queso blanco? I need to know. I'm lost. Yeah. I have no clue of what it is. So to me, I think the way that we can evolve despite the racism is acknowledgement. Like I said, we don't want to get rid of the Agatha Christie Award. Let's make it a minority award. Let's make it an award for the people she would have spit on in the way that she moved. Let's do that, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like, and we know that it's a thing, right? We know that things have changed because, we know NK called out Lovecraft, right? Mm-hmm. We know she had something to say. There was conversation. There were things. Changes do come about when you stand up and say, hey, like, nah, I think we need to revisit this. Like, yeah, this person wrote a lot of dope things. Yeah, their pen game was good, but their head was not.
Right.
They were not a good person.
Right.
I feel like if we can say that and have that conversation about R. Kelly and his music, we can have it about Agatha Christie and her books.
Absolutely. Yep.
Just because it was written years ago don't mean we can't have the same conversation. It don't make sense to me.
Right.
I'm reminded of Monsters Ball, where Billy Bob Thornton's character goes from races against Black folks to falling in love with a Black woman, ending his lovers with the most extreme situations. I ain't ever seen the movie, and I have gone to pick with the movie because I know, not saying the movie was flawless or anything, but an interesting step in our journey through this whole thing. No, I get it. I have an issue with it, but it's also why I have an issue with Denzel and Training Day, because Denzel had to be a dirty cop before he got his Oscar. I'm gonna always feel some type of way about that because it was a great role. It was not at all his best role.
Right.
Not at all. Like, it just wasn't. Like, this man is a phenomenal actor and has had phenomenal roles, and Training Day is not the number one. It just isn't. Right? Like, Halle Berry. I feel some type of way that you had to fuck that man to get that award, because the truth of the matter is, people were like, no, it was because she was a drug addict. She was a drug addict and losing Isaiah, and I swear to God, you have never seen a better, more reformed crackhead than in that movie. That movie will rip your soul out of your chest.
Yep.
It is such a crazy good movie, but she ain't win for that. Right. We don't talk about American Gangster. He wasn't even a good person in American Gangster, but he killed that role.
so good. That movie was
He
so
killed
good.
that role. Okay, so okay. Hear me out though. John Q. Okay.
I love John Q.
Hear me out though. John Q. All I'm saying is, I'm not gonna bury my son. My son gonna bury me. That's all I'm just saying. John Q.
That was so
Yes,
good.
I do think you should do this. If you read this white classic, read this black classic. I think that would be a dope video. I would share that. I'm inspired. I'm gonna do a black classic video. You should read for. Yes, do it. Tanika, I had to. You're right. That makes sense. If you do it right, Philadelphia was a masterclass in messy protagonist. Man, he is a masterclass on everything, y'all. Like just anything. Like you watch, he don't do a lot of interviews, but you watch those little 30-second clips of Denzel's visit. He's always dropping gems.
Yeah,
I swear, like he is number one on my list of people I want to meet before they die. Like I like. God, do not let Denzel leave this earth before I get to shake his hand. Like I done already missed out on Chadwick. Do not make me miss out on Denzel. Do not make me miss out. I I'm crying because I'm like, I just one time, I just would like to shake his hand. Cause Denzel is man, Uncle Denzel, y'all.
Oh
right?
gosh,
No, need to do that. John Q. It was such a good one. I go that. It makes me cry every single time. It makes me cry every single time, but it's such a good one. Him and Elise Neal, or not Elise Neal. Was it Elise Neal? No, it's not. Kimberly Elise. I knew it was Kimberly Elise. When she was like, "You are not going to use me to build a case against my husband. I'm with him in everything he does. I am on his side, not yours." I was like, "Yes, baby, yes." Yeah.
Honestly, anything you watch of his is gold. Like he cannot do a bad movie. He can't.
He
cannot.
Good, just great.
Anything.
Well, I'm sorry, Adrian. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know. We all so sad. We all so sad. Man, and a day go by, I don't miss that man. Like, man. But all right, y'all. We've talked about our classics and how we want to. Yes, because come on, Walter Mosley. Devil in Blue Dress. And Denzel in the movie, Devil in the Blue Dress. Don Cheadle, Mouse. All I'm saying. Don Cheadle, give him his flowers too, is all I'm saying. It is a classic. But yeah, we got any final thoughts before we get out of here?
I just want to say thank you to Cachet. You are amazing and an inspiration. I love everything about you. And I'm so glad. Don't, because if you cry, I'm going to cry. Don't. But I'm so glad that we got to do this. I really, really am. This has been a wonderful experience. It really has been.
For real, like a really dope experience for sure. And like even like as much as we're talking about the racism and everything in there, I don't want y'all to think for a second I'm not having a time of my life reading these short stories and poems. Like I totally get why this man is considered a classic. And I'm not taking that away from him. I'm just saying that after reading this, it makes me want to expand. I want to. Where are the Black short story writers that been writing since back then? What do I need to look up to find them? Because I know they existed.
They exist. Absolutely.
I know it might be harder to find them, but that's what it did. It's got me intrigued because it's like this man couldn't have been the only man writing like this.
Absolutely.
Couldn't have been. And he was. He about to inspire me, and he ain't gonna be for too much longer.
I'm gonna research. We gotta find.
Or we gotta find some like an original. Ladies, this is short for me, but fantastic. I have to head out. Take care. Nothing but love. No worries. Yes, give me the rags, Bree. Give me the rags. All right, y'all. I want to thank y'all so very much for hanging out with us. We appreciate y'all so much. This has been a great journey. The list of next week's things are in the description box. I will be coming off of vacation, so we will let y'all know like time and stuff as we figure all that out. But thank y'all so much for being here. We appreciate y'all. Y'all have I'm saying fantastic rest of my day. Like I still don't know where my mouse is. So let me stop. Okay. Y'all have a fantastic rest of y'all day. Okay, bye.